My brothers and sisters, a proclamation from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he had sat down, his disciples came to him. He began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven." The gospel, the good news of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
If you were asked how God shows himself to us face to face, eye to eye, what would you say? How would you tell another that God comes to us? How would you answer this God question? There was an 8-year-old boy whose younger sister was dying of leukemia. His parents told him that she needed a blood transfusion and that without it she could die, and that his blood was probably compatible. The results showed, after he agreed to have his blood tested, that sure enough, his blood was compatible with that of his sister. Perfect match. They then asked if he would give a pint of his blood to his sister so that she could live. He asked if his mom and dad would let him think about it overnight. They agreed. Next day, he got up and he told his parents that he was willing to give his blood to his sister. So they took him to the hospital where she was at, and they laid him on a gurney right out beside of her. She was resting, didn't even really know that he was there, and they began to draw his blood out. Then they took his blood that was in an IV bag, and they put it on her IV pole, and the nurse hooked up his blood to her IV. And he laid there and watched, drop by drop by drop, go into her IV and into her body. The doctor came in and asked how he was doing. He looked up at the doctor with big eyes and said to him, "How soon till I die?" The brother believed with all of his heart that giving his blood would mean that he would die, but he was willing to do it so that his sister could have life, so that she could live. As Jesus goes up to the mountain, the disciples followed. And with the disciples all gathered around him, on their level, he has them to sit down and looks at them eye to eye and begins to teach them. He begins to show them how God shows himself to us. He does this by giving them the Beatitudes, this list of blessedness that serves as a blueprint for how we live. It serves as the map for how we live the Christian life. We may look at this list of blessedness and think, I can't do that. For some, you may think they're far holier than you are. Maybe they can do it, but I can't do it. I'm not a good mourner. I'm not a good peacemaker. I'm not very merciful. I'm certainly not clean of heart. And I certainly don't rejoice when others insult me or persecute me. You know, far to the opposite, when someone else insults and persecutes me, what comes out of my mouth is far from holy, far from rejoicing at all. Yet there is a part in all of us that desires to be holy, and I believe that desires to be the saints that God calls us to be. That part in all of us is called connection. We all want to be connected. We have this desire to be connected with another, and most assuredly, we desire to be connected with God. A couple of Mondays ago, I was coming home from a day off. I had gone out to the land between the lakes to drive up the Trace Highway. Well, out there, I stopped to see the bison on the bison prairie, which, by the way, I drove around twice, and after paying my $5, I didn't see any bison at all. I even went to look at a couple of the old cemeteries that are out there. On the way back, before I got on the interstate, needing to gas up, I stopped at the convenience store to get some gas and to get a snack and a cup of coffee. As I tried to pay, I went up to the cashier to pay, and he had one of those plexiglass screens there to protect he from the customer. As I tried to pay, I was trying to hand my credit card underneath of the screen so that he could take it and swipe my card. All the while, he's pointing down to a table that's on my side of the register. I saw the table. He was pointing at the credit card machine, but I wasn't connecting. I wasn't getting what he was wanting me to do at all. I just kept trying to hand my credit card to him. And he kept pointing at the credit card machine that was on my side, wanting me to swipe it myself. We don't like barriers. Be it plexiglass, or be it our own internal barriers that we throw up or that somebody else throws up to us. We don't like it. In our preaching over the past few Sundays, we've been taking steps with God to grow in faith and to find greater strength in these challenging times. Maybe we're resisting. How are you doing? How are you doing as you take your steps towards growing in God? Are you growing? Do you find yourself moving with God? Or is the pandemic or some other situation, some internal issue that perhaps you're dealing with, keeping you from taking those steps? Winston Churchill says this. He says we should never waste a good crisis. Again, I want to invite you to consider, how are you doing? How are you doing in your growing in relationship with God? To help us to take these steps, we've been pushing against the culture, pushing against the resistance, and looking towards the saints to find our strength. The saints pushed through so much, so many barriers that they were up against, they pushed against so that God could be clearly seen. There are two saints in particular I want to look at today. You can take your fall preaching series guide out of your worship guide, and you can find there the two saints. We're going to look at Saint Bernadette, and we're also going to look at Saint Oscar Romero. And you might want to go ahead and turn to your fourth Sunday in our preaching series. Bernadette was only 14 years old when the Virgin Mary appeared to her. She was never considered to be very bright, and often she asked the Virgin Mary why she would choose her. In her own words, Bernadette said, "Don't I realize the Virgin chose me because I was so ignorant?" She said if she had found somebody smarter than her, if she'd found somebody more ignorant than her, she would have chosen them. She said, "Mary used me like a broom." "What do you do with the broom when you're finished sweeping?" she said. "You put it back behind the door and you keep it there until you use it again." Bernadette shows us that none of us like being used, but it's when we allow ourselves to be used by God that God can do some of the most profound things with us. Oscar Romero was canonized as saint on October the 14th of 2018. He was selected to be the Archbishop of El Salvador because he was thought to be a safe choice. He was thought to be weak, he was thought to have little voice, and he was thought that he wouldn't rock the boat too much. But amid all the tremendous political tension, he denounced the dictator of El Salvador, and he chose instead to stand with the poor. His voice was most clearly heard in the prayer of the Mass. Once, while walking to a village to free a group of the poor who were being held against their will by the El Salvadoran army, he was accosted by a group of soldiers himself. With guns in hand, they were ordering the archbishop and his entourage to turn back, but he would not. Instead, what the archbishop did was he began right there the Mass. "In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. The Lord be with you," he said to them. And his people responded, "And with your spirit." And he continued. And as he prayed against their guns and against the soldiers' voices, they backed up. They lowered their weapons and they allowed the archbishop and his group to pass. It was on the morning of March the 24th of 1980 in a small chapel at a hospital with a small group of nuns, while the archbishop was standing behind the altar during the Eucharistic prayer, that one single assassin came in and shot the archbishop through the heart. He died while offering the body and blood of Christ. Powerful. What one is willing to do in service and witness so that others can see God face to face. Let us work towards growing in God. Let us continue to work towards taking our steps so that others can see us and see God face to face through us, and that we can show others what God looks like. We can do this. We can live the Beatitudes. We can be blessed, holy people. We can be clean of heart. We can be merciful. We can be poor in spirit. Let me offer some ways, and I'd ask you to perhaps use again your fourth week in your preaching card for the Solemnity of All Saints to write down what way this week you're going to show. You're going to be the face of Christ, the face of God to another. Perhaps one of these steps here, or maybe another step. We can do this by praying for something that's been really hard for us to deal with in our life. Maybe it's been a lifelong problem that we've had, or some more recent issue that we've experienced. But truly pray, and I would suggest that one of the greatest prayers that we can pray in surrender, because that's what we're doing, is the serenity prayer. To use the serenity prayer to go up against whatever it is that keeps a barrier, that keeps God from being seen in you through others. We can do this by showing another that we're Christian. Witness the power of Christ to another. Perhaps keep a rosary in your pocket and let somebody else catch you praying that during a break or as you're sitting in traffic. Maybe even to carry a Bible in hand with you. It'd be powerful to see us to begin to bring our own Bibles to church, to show that we are witnesses to the power of the resurrection. Moms and dads, let your kids catch you praying at night. Spouses, let your partner see you kneeling beside your bed in prayer before you get into your bed in the evening. Be a witness to the power of what God can do. We can also celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation, to come to confession, to be clean of heart. When we're clean of heart, it's much more easier for us to share our heart with another. I'd encourage you to come on Wednesday evening at 5:15 and celebrate the sacrament. Or make an appointment with me. I'd be happy to meet with you at any time to share in this powerful sacrament of God's healing love. Another suggestion would be to make a holy hour. It's a great place in this church to come and socially distance in this season, to come and sit in the presence of Jesus Christ in the sacrament and make an hour of power and prayer. Our churches should be a nuclear powerhouse for prayer that can truly change our world and change our direction so that others can see the fire of God burning through us. We can do this while we're going and picking up groceries this week for the poor, and we're putting them in our baskets that in turn we're taking out to our food bank. And as you're going and you're doing your shopping, what if you were to pray for that person who's going to receive your groceries? Though you do not know them, to pray for them. We got to look for those ways that we can take down those barriers to make us stronger in faith so that we can grow in our relationship with God. It's through taking down our barriers that others will see God in us. Then we can truly live the blessedness and the holiness of life. Take our next step with God. And then in the end, my brothers and sisters, be named among the saints.